This is LBC. Nick Ferrari at Breakfast with Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Alan's on 84850. Tom, no one is talking about the fact that Sajid Javid is creating the perfect conditions to develop a super variant. What the government is doing in opening up is reckless, says Alan. Let's put some of that to the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, who joins me live on LBC. Welcome to the programme, Chancellor. Thank you for being there for us this morning.
Good morning.
I'll come on to the football a bit later, if I may. I want to start,
of course.
There's a lot going on. I want to start with your description, based on what we've read from the IFS, your description of the state of the economy after the IFS describing jobs and earnings holding up. How would you describe how it's going?
Well, a year ago today, we outlined our plan for jobs, and the good news is we stuck to that plan, and the plan is definitely working. I was out and about yesterday in the West Midlands seeing businesses, and everywhere you go, you see the plan in action. So new young kickstarters starting their new roles, ending up in full-time jobs, apprentices learning new skills and getting paid more, people having come back from furlough, delighted to be back at work, their job saved, and businesses that have received the support we've provided over the year and have got through it and are now looking to expand, grow, and take on new staff. So I think we should have confidence in the future. I think the signs are good compared to the absolutely dismal forecast that we were seeing last year and people's fears of millions of people unemployed. I think we've done a really good job of making sure that that has not happened, and we can look forward to the future with confidence.
Andy Haldane described it as going gangbusters. Do you agree?
Well, Andy's always very positive, and I think there are reasons to be so. I'm particularly focused on jobs. I've always said that jobs is my number one economic priority, and a year ago, today we were people were forecasting that unemployment would rise to 12%. I mean, that would be 4 million people unemployed. The forecasts now are for unemployment to peak at less than half of that. That's 2 million jobs that have been saved. The last 5 months, every month we've put more and more people into work, which is great to see. If companies are keen to hire more people, consumer confidence is back to pre-crisis levels, businesses are keen to invest. So look, I feel cautiously optimistic that as we reopen, the economy is moving up a gear, and we should have confidence about that.
What about certain sectors that are still struggling, the travel sector in particular? Is there any way in which the help that has been extended to the rest of the economy could be targeted at specific sectors like them?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to design sector-based support in the way that people envisage it, because you can never really quite say, well, where does
so
travel
they will
end
lose
and
the
something
support along with
starts.
everybody else, despite not being able to get up on their feet.
Well, what I would say, I think the most important things to note is the sector has received over £7 billion of support through our various interventions, and that support continues. It's not as if it ends today. It's going on for a while. The other thing is, as you know, the Transport Secretary is due to make a statement in Parliament with an update on our policy on travel. I know that's something that people are keen to see. Obviously, that can be of benefit to the sector, removing the need to quarantine from amber list countries that the Prime Minister said a while ago was our intention to move to. Obviously, we'll preempt what the Transport Secretary says. But so we are doing what we can to enable the sector to get back
but it
to
doesn't
where it
sound
would
like
to
more.
be.
It doesn't sound like more is coming. Let me ask you about the £20 a week uplift in universal credit. That is one of the measures that the IFS have said has been very helpful in this economic bounce back. Why is it being cut?
It was one part of a very large package of measures that we put in place at the start of this crisis when we were facing the forecast that we talked about earlier. And like many other things in the package, as we get through the crisis, it will end because it was always meant to be temporary. That was the clear intention when it was
scheme was
announced.
meant to end before it actually did, and the restrictions were supposed to end before they did. Things can be extended if they need to be. Why do these people miss out?
Well, no, they're not, because all of the things that you just mentioned have been extended. These things were meant to end before. They're not. They've all been extended, but they're ending in September, well after the end of the restrictions. So there's actually a suitable cushion and buffer there. But I think actually the most important point is, and I think most people realise, you can't carry on crisis interventions forever. We can't have a furlough scheme at that cost forever, clearly. So these things are right for a crisis. They're not right for long term. But actually taking a step back, what's the most important way to help people? I fully believe that we want to help those who are most vulnerable in society. I'm proud that our actions over the last year have delivered that. I said I would do that in my first press conference in this job, and we have delivered it. But the best way to help people, I think, and the government believes, is to help them get into work and get well-paid jobs. And we are throwing literally the kitchen. We are literally throwing the kitchen sink at supporting people into jobs. And that is not just saying, oh, off you go. It's increasing the national living wage by £350 a year this year for someone who's a full-time worker. It means providing with the opportunity to get their first level 3 qualification, which tragically 11 million adults in this country don't have. That's worth £3,500. That's supporting people, but it's supporting people in a way that we know is going to have the biggest long-term impact on their lives and on their families. And we passionately believe that's the right thing to do, and we are doing it.
You will know that people are receiving their letters to start paying back their bounce-back loans now, and the Department for Business have said that the taxpayer could be spending £27 billion in fraud or credit losses. Somewhere between 35 and 60% of loans might not be repaid. Do you recognise those numbers?
Look, those are estimates that people put out previously. Let's see what happens. I probably am a bit more optimistic, but it's early days. What I would say, though, is to all the businesses, and hopefully there are some that are listening, if you took out a bounce-back loan, over a million businesses have, you've had a year where you haven't had to pay anything back, you've not paid any interest. That's what we decided to do. Now, you've got a 5-year loan at a very attractive low rate of 2.5%. You should talk to your bank about something called pay as you grow.
Yes.
And what that means is, if you want, automatically you can change your 5-year bounce back loan into a 10-year bounce back loan that will cut your monthly repayment. That will cut your monthly repayment by almost half. You can also take 6-month payment re-holidays or interest-only periods. We created that program to help businesses ease
people should
the
pay
stress on their cash flow.
You shouldn't be losing 35% of those. People have the, as you've described, to pay it back over a longer period of time, less money over a month. So much more should be coming back into the exchequer than that.
Well, look, let's see what happens. But remember, this was deliberately a crisis intervention. pension. Of course, we're not going to get any penny back of those. That otherwise the private banking system could have provided these loans. But in a crisis where the government had to step in and provide support to businesses, we obviously took the unprecedented step of doing 100% guarantee loans because it was the only way to get cash out to very small businesses. It was the right thing to do. But I'm confident that with the pay-as-you-grow option, that will help many businesses get through.
Let me put the point that Lord Karen Bill-Moria made on the programme earlier. He is having to self-isolate along with many, many millions of people now, despite not being unwell and despite testing negative for COVID because of the pinging that's going on around the app. How much is that self-isolation costing the economy, and is it a legal requirement to isolate if you are pinged by the app?
Well, you're right, and I appreciate people's frustrations about this. And I know, Karen, I didn't know he'd been pinged, but I can imagine he's very frustrated about that. But it won't keep him from being as highly energetic as he is in representing business to the government. And now, look, there are two different systems, and I've had a chat with the Health Secretary about this yesterday. There are two different systems. There's the NHS test and trace system, and then there's the app, and the app is slightly different. And I think most people's concerns and frustrations rest with the app, which accounts for the majority of the contact isolation. And what the Health Secretary is doing he's asked for advice on the app so that we can see if there's a proportionate and balanced approach
the point
one can take with that.
If there's no legal requirement to isolate if you've been pinged by the app, then people can just ignore it, can't they?
Well, as you said, they are different systems. The Health Secretary has asked for advice on the app and is trying to.
Have you been pinged by it? Do you have it on your phone?
I do. Of course, I have the app on my phone. But the right thing to do is to find a balanced and proportionate approach. This has been a very helpful tool in our toolkit over the past several months in helping to keep cases down. I haven't got from hundreds of thousands from memory.
So
I think it's half a million.
It's preventing people from being able to go to work. It's stopping people who are well entering the economy again.
Yes. Of course it's frustrating. I mean, gosh, there are many things that have been frustrating over the last 12 to 18 months, right? Because we've been living with this virus and everyone is having to make sacrifices to try and suppress the spread of it until we can get to the point where we've vaccinated enough people that we can safely reopen. We are at that point now. Look, is this extra few weeks frustrating? I know it is. The Health Secretary's asked for some advice and to look at what we should do with the app. But I hope people can step back and look at the big picture, think where we were just a few months ago, and here we are on the verge of having the vast majority of our freedoms back. And for businesses in particular, which is why I'm here to talk to you, that is an enormously positive step, because we had this plan that we outlined a year ago. We stuck to the plan. The plan is working. There are fewer people out of work than were feared. Businesses are growing again. They're hiring more people. That's what we need to do. And with the removal of the restrictions like the 1 meter plus and the limits on gatherings, that last bit of what was holding back the brakes that were on the economy can be lifted a bit, and that gives me confidence that we can get everyone back to work and have the economy growing nicely again.
And in a sentence, Chancellor, do you think that the school day should be extended to help pupils catch up?
I think that's something that Well, I think that's something that obviously we'll look at in the spending review. You know, we're collecting the evidence on that and having a look at it. But what I would say is people should know we remain incredibly committed to our children's education. Over the 3 years that we're in, an extra £14 billion is going into the school system. We announced that before this crisis even, to get per pupil funding back up to what are historically very high levels.
You'll be looking at it. Yeah.
That's worth £800 per pupil. People should know that. On top of that, we've announced £3 billion to help children catch up with the lost learning and ushering in a new age of tutoring in this country, which is something that we know, all the evidence tells us, makes the biggest difference to children. I think your listeners would want us to be spending money on things that we know make a difference. We know tutoring does. We're investing billions of pounds in it, and people should know we're hugely committed to our children.
And very, very finally, Chancellor, because I know I've got to let you go, can we please have a bank holiday on Monday?
Well, I think you and I may be the only people who are up at this point today. So, but I hope everyone enjoys their extra 45 minutes in the pub on Sunday night.
Well, that's
there you go.
I think at least they can stay in the pub, but I don't think a bank holiday is going to have a good speech. Chancellor, thank you very much indeed. The Chancellor Rishi Sunak here on LBC. We'll pick up a bit of what he said later on in the programme. We'll come to your thoughts as well on what happened last night at Wembley, a historic night. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC. The news at 8 is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.